Coming up, Indigenous Peoples Day is almost here. We preview the events happening around the country. And we learn about a new project at Zuni Pueblo increasing food sovereignty. Plus, an emerging artist from Canada is increasing Indigenous representation in the music industry. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Arizona is home to 22 tribal nations and more than 340,000 Native Americans. Arizona State University builds on more than 6 decades of working and partnering with tribal nations and communities. Many of our Native faculty incorporate Indigenous knowledge systems in seeking solutions through a process of community engagement that respects and honors traditional ways of thinking. Together, we are creating community solutions leading to a more equitable future.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Amirawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. We start in Cape Canaveral, Florida, where 4 astronauts launched into space Wednesday at a whopping 17,000 miles per hour. NASA's SpaceX Crew 5 mission is being led by Nicole Mann, who has officially made history as the first Native American woman in space. The 4 astronauts caught a ride on the spacecraft called Dragon Endurance. The astronauts are flying to the floating laboratory called the International Space Station. Mann, who is from the Round Valley Indian tribes in Northern California, is the commander of the mission. This means she is responsible for all phases of flight, from launch to re-entry of Earth's atmosphere. Once aboard the International Space Station, the crew will perform science and maintenance activities. The mission is slated to last 5 months, and this is Mann's first space flight since becoming an astronaut in 2013. According to census data released by Statistics Canada, in 2021, Indigenous children accounted for 53.8% of all children in foster care. That number is disproportionate when compared to non-Indigenous children. APTN's Fraser Needham shares more.
The Indigenous population in Canada grew by 9.7% between 2016 and 2021, according to Statistics Canada. This outstrips the non-Indigenous population, which grew by 5.3%. However, this number is lower than 2016 growth, which was almost 19%. Christopher Penny is with Stats Canada.
We see differences when it comes to Inuit, Métis, and First Nations, and we see differences at the regional level as well. So we see Métis growth has slowed, and we see First Nations with registry status has slowed. Again, all still higher than the non-Indigenous population.
He says the lower growth rate may be due to a number of factors.
But we also see other growth from response mobility, and this is people that are answering the census differently in one year than they do in the past. And this can be due to a number of factors. There have been a number of court decisions or legislative changes that have changed the requirements or the eligibility for the Indian Act or for other agreements. There are the signatures of modern treaties or other modern agreements.
Indigenous Services Canada Minister Patty Hajdu says she also doesn't know why the growth rate slowed, but she says the government sees an overall growing Indigenous population as a tremendous opportunity.
That means that Indigenous people have amongst the youngest population that they are serving in their own communities. It means that there's an opportunity to invest in young people so they reach their full potential. It means that we have a growing population within Canada that is actually the envy of the G7.
The Stats Canada numbers also show a rapidly rising Indigenous population in urban centres. This includes a major growth of Inuit population living outside Inuit Nunavut at almost 24%. Hajdu says this shows the importance of the government working with partners like Indigenous Friendship Centres to provide services.
That are looking at things like how to access higher education, how to manage the bureaucracy of living in an urban setting, how to fill out important forms for the federal government, like tax forms that allow them to collect Canada Child benefits.
APTN reached out to the Assembly of First Nations and Inuit Taprit Kanatami for comment, but did not hear back by airtime. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Back to the U.S., where the application for student loan forgiveness is expected to launch next week. In August, President Joe Biden announced that if you have federal student loans and make under $125,000 a year, $10,000 of student loans can be forgiven. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona spoke to ICT to say the pandemic spurred Biden to take action.
The pandemic affected everybody. I know Indigenous communities were impacted significantly. I visited them myself. So he took it a step further and said, for those who qualify for Pell Grants, meaning economically disadvantaged or don't have the resources, we're going to double it. We're going to go to $20,000. He didn't campaign on that, but he recognized the impact it would have on communities like our Indigenous communities across the country.
There are currently 3 lawsuits challenging student loan forgiveness. White House officials say the application process is a simple one and will open in early October. Well, the new series Spirit Rangers is coming to Netflix in a few short days on Monday, October 10th. This historic series is believed to be the first kids show in U.S. television history to be created by a Native woman. Chumash citizen Carissa Valencia created the show with an all-Native writing room. The show is part of Netflix's Representation Matters collection, which consists of projects focusing on storylines by and about people of color. The show follows 3 Indigenous siblings who are secret spirit rangers and protect a national park they call home. Viewers will be able to find Spirit Rangers on their Netflix accounts on Monday. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. From one of the creative centers in Arctic Canada, Nunavut artist Jacob Okatsiak wants to inspire the next generation of Indigenous artists in the music industry. With a new single and an album on the way, Okatsiak combines tradition into his artistry. ICT producer Mackenzie Allen Charmley caught up with him while he was on the road. Let's watch.
So to start, we know you're a young artist, but you actually have a lot of experience in the music industry already. What can you tell our audiences about your career up until this point?
I actually started when I was younger. Like, to get to the point I'm here, it's like a long journey, but I'll tell it like in most brief, short, not short, but the main ones. So when I was like 7 or 6, my parents are Christian, so we used to go to the church service a lot. And like they were often like singing and stuff like that. And with that being said, my families, my cousins, my relatives are quite musical. So my grandparents are like musical. My late dad, he was musical, and I guess I have to be musical too. So with that being said, not that I don't like I have to, but it's like this gift. So when I was young, I used to attend these church services with my dad, and like I would hear all these like people singing, and I like that. Like that sparked something inside of me. Like I gotta listen to the beats, and then I was like, I like how that guy's playing the guitar. Like I was a young kid, so I was in my like head a lot, and like I want to play the guitar. And so one time my dad was home, and then I asked him, "Dad, can you teach me how to play the guitar, the piano, I mean?" And then he often used to play piano a lot, so he inspired me to like play the piano and stuff like that. And once I knew how easy it was to learn music through him, like I knew I could do anything.
More specifically, I had read a bio of yours that had mentioned you were inspired by other Indigenous rappers. Could you tell us about the people, the other artists, Indigenous artists who inspired you, and then what you took from them to put in your own music?
I used to listen to a lot of like Nunavut rappers back then, like Shaughnessy Knock, Hyper T, and like Young Black Inuk, X-Con, like Vixter, Arky, like those names, like I bet most people don't remember them, but I do. Like I was their biggest fan. Like I always loved how they can express their feelings and like just put it out there. Like I like how they were doing that. Something I would like I always had like imagined to do like all these times growing up playing the guitar and stuff like that. And yeah, they were my biggest inspiration.
Overall, what are your goals as an artist?
My goal as an artist is to be as much as I can so I can help others and give to others because I want to help with my music. At first, I only wanted to grow. Like growing up, I wanted to expand my musical talents, just expand. But as I got older, my dad, he always like used to tell me these things that are gonna help me through like my journey. So it's quite inspirational, and I learned a lot from him, and I want to thank him. And yeah, with that being said, I feel like I can help. Like I have this power inside of me, like to help other people through my music.
You know, in the music industry today, we really do need Indigenous representation. If you could give any advice to other Indigenous artists who are trying to get their voice out like you, what would you tell them?
Um, I want to share what my grandma once told me a long time ago when I first started like following this path. I told her that I first learned how to play the piano. Like that was the first step. And then I told my grandma about it. We were alone at her place. I grew up at my grandma's, so I told her about it, and she sat down next to me, like with gracious smile and all. I could tell she was proud of me, and out of her heart, I can feel it that. She told me this, and I quote: "Start with what you have, and go from there." Like I felt that personally, like deep, and I could feel a lot from it, knowing she used to like live in an igloo back then, and now she's living in a house, and that kind of resonated with me, like in my heart. Like I like, how do I say this? At first, as most of these indigenous rappers and artists, I started from like at the lowest. Like I mean, we all have to start somewhere, right? So I started recording with like Bluetooth speakers and like yeah, Bluetooth speakers in my phone, and that was pretty much it. But that drive, that focus, you gotta have that. Like you gotta have your pride. Like don't let anything stop you. Just start from where you are and go from there. Like it don't matter if you're like if you have a pen and paper, then that's what you need and that drive.
The fall season means harvest time, and in New Mexico, Zuni students are learning to not only plant their food, but to cook it as well. The Zuni Youth Enrichment Project is supported by a grant from the CDC's Tribal Practices for Wellness in Indian Country, plus several more federal and state programs. At the core of this effort is to increase food sovereignty. Let's take a look at just how excited these students are about that. Joining us today to talk about the project are three key members: Brittany Seotoa, Zachary James, and Kenzie Bokati. Kenzie, let's just jump right in here. Let's start with you. Tell us how this program incorporates Zuni culture.
Yes, good morning. So how our program implements our Zuni culture is by working with the students and including our language. So every day that we work with our students, we talk to them in our Zuni language, as well as really educating them about the traditions that comes along with agriculture and cultivating our land. We try to teach our students that they can practice food sovereignty, and food sovereignty has been a part of our tradition for many generations. And our students are really amazing. Our Zuni youth is really capable of doing so much when it comes to continuing those traditions and speaking the language. And we're really proud of them here at ZYEP.
Brittany, I want to go to you. Have other tribal communities approached your group to see how they can replicate this program?
Yes, so we have partnered with the People's Farm in White River, Arizona, and we've just been, going back and forth and trying to figure out what we can learn from each other, because other communities, we're all trying to achieve the same thing, the same goal, and that's to build better communities and healthier communities through food sovereignty. And so we have a lot of networks going on here at ZYEP and within the community, within our tribal programs.
Zachary, I want to go to you because we report so often on our newscast about the scarcity of water. So I'm really curious in this program how you're, putting efforts towards conserving water.
Yes, good morning. So Zuni is located in the Southwest. We are a dry climate. Water is one of our most sacred things here. It's in our songs, it's in our prayers. Here at ZYEP, we try to implement that way through rain harvest pretty much. We have partner gardens which are completely run off rain harvest. Recently in 2020, we did a rain barrel initiative, which we gave 100 rain barrels to 100 Zuni families. When they turned in a paragraph about why they thought water conservation was important. It's just sparking something that has always been in our culture, something we've always been practicing, and something that we need, especially in this time of climate change and everything. It's just revitalizing and teaching our youth the importance of water and why it's so important to us. And water is life, and we like to express that a lot.
Kenzie, I want to go back to you because I understand you all work with garden kits. So tell us about those and, maybe what the reaction has been to that.
Yes, so when the COVID-19 pandemic had started, it kind of got in the way of some of the plans that we already had here at ZYEP. So one of the ways we adapted was by giving out garden kits to our community. That way we can still support gardening efforts in our community and support families by giving them non-GMO seeds, a lot of educational handouts and advice, being there for them throughout the year, as well as rain barrels for them to harvest rainwater. And I feel like that really sparked a whole different generation of young Zuni farmers. And we really love supporting our families when it comes to Zuni farming.
Brittany, we only have a short time left here, but I want to understand how big of a program this is. So maybe tell us, how many students you serve and what ages they are.
Okay, so the Zuni Youth Enrichment Project is a pretty vast and it's growing program. So we not only focus on food sovereignty, but we also implement sports through physical education. We also do an art apprenticeship program here. So there is a lot going on at Zuni Youth Enrichment Project.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. So Kenzie, Brittany, and Zachary, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Indigenous Peoples Day is 4 days away. So how are people celebrating? ICT has the answers, and we've compiled a list of some of the major events happening. Joining us today to share more is ICT reporter and producer Colby Kickingwoman. Hi, Colby. Great to see you.
Hi. Thanks for having me again. Good to be here.
So it seems like Indigenous Peoples Day events are growing and growing. What are some of the major celebrations happening this year?
Definitely. There are a lot of events taking place this year, from New York to California, Alaska to Nebraska, and everywhere in between. I would say, every celebration is a major celebration. As we all know, the pandemic but basically halted all large gatherings. And that's a big part of who we are as Indigenous people. So I think, people are excited to be able to gather again, and especially on a day like Indigenous Peoples Day to celebrate who we are.
Absolutely. I mean, let's actually talk about what kinds of events are happening, because I know that last year, I should say, there was a lot of virtual events. Are we going to be seeing more in-person events, or can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I would say a lot of them are going to be a lot more in person, but some are going to be virtual, and some live streamed as well. The National Museum of the American Indian is hosting a Indigenous Peoples Day teach-in series. One on Saturday and one on Monday that attendees need to register for. But yeah, a lot are going to be in person. And I think that's why we're seeing so many across the country.
When you really look at the events, it's a wide range. I've seen everything from marches to parades to, as you just mentioned, teach-ins. Tell us about some of the other events.
Yes, all sorts of stuff. There's a festival in Phoenix that's going to be hosting or streaming and showing a Sundance Award-winning film. Here in Missoula, there's going to be a dedication ceremony, officially naming a bridge on Higgins Avenue near downtown, the Bear Tracks Bridge, followed by a small powwow. As you mentioned, we published the list on our website, and since we published it, I've received a number of emails of other events taking across the country. So that list is going to be updated soon, and I would encourage our viewers to go to ictnews.org to see what's going on near them.
It's still a few days away, as I mentioned, but do we have any idea yet if President Joe Biden will issue a proclamation on Indigenous Peoples Day?
We don't know for sure, but since President Biden has gotten in office, he's made it a priority to work with and recognize Indian country. We can see that in some of the memorandums that he's issued, as well as some of his political appointees. And he also issued one last year, so I'd be very surprised if he did not issue one come Monday.
Colby, we only have a short time left here, but of course, if people can't make these virtual events or in-person events, I imagine that social media is going to be a really popular place for people. Maybe talk about that.
Definitely. I think social media is just another way for us to gather virtually. And so, I think we're going to see a lot of people sharing, just pictures of them or videos of them, just celebrating it in whatever way they can. And so that should be exciting.
And Colby, what are you going to be doing on Indigenous Peoples Day?
Oh, I will be heading down to the dedication ceremony here in downtown Missoula. my niece is going to be dancing in the POW taking afterwards, and so it's going to be exciting and fun to see her get out there.
Absolutely. Well, I plan to spend the day with my family as well, hopefully eat some good food and just celebrate all that Indigenous people are. I'm very excited. Well, Colby, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.